It is the late 1890s, and an Irish writer is contemplating his next novel on holiday in Scotland. The writer is on one of his many long walks along the northeast coast and comes across Slains Castle. Battered by the cliffside elements, but somehow still alive, the castle has an atmosphere that our writer has been craving. It lights a fire in his imagination. Soon he will write a novel that will inspire an entire genre of literature and films, and with it, arguably the best known literary character, certainly in English and possibly in world literature. That character is Dracula, and the writer is today's history maker, Bram Stoker. Born Abraham Stoker in 1847 on the north side of Dublin. His father worked as a civil servant in Dublin Castle. He was a delicate child and was educated at home until the age of 12, under the care of his talkative mother, who told him many Irish stories of ghosts, early deaths, and pestilences. The only mystery about Stoker's early life is that he was an invalid for his first 7 years, yet grew up strong and healthy. While Stoker, who may have been a failure at Trinity College Dublin, he was popular there, a noted debater as well as a sportsman. For some years, Stoker followed his father's career working as a civil servant in Dublin, while also writing drama criticism for the Dublin Evening Mail. Theatre critics were held in low esteem at the time, but Stoker attracted notice by the quality of his reviews. Oscar Wilde had entered Trinity College Dublin when Stoker was in his final year there, and Stoker came to know Oscar, and in his late 20s he began to publish stories in magazines. In December 1876, Stoker saw a play that would change his life. Henry Irving was the leading actor of his day, and upon Stoker giving a favourable review of Irving's Hamlet at the Theatre Royal in Dublin, Irving invited Stoker for dinner at the Shelbourne Hotel where he was staying, and they would become friends. With each of Henry Irving's visits to Dublin, he became more and more stage-struck, until eventually, in 1878, when Stoker was 31, and, much to the horror of his parents, he agreed to give up his job and pension working as a civil servant in Dublin and move to London to work for Irving. Importuned by Stoker, Irving took him on as his business manager at London's Lyceum Theatre. However, it was not to be a happy relationship. Irving was in love only with Irving, and he treated Stoker openly as an inferior. Meanwhile, Stoker had married Florence Balcombe, Oscar Wilde apparently also being interested in her. Stoker and Florence would go on to have a son, Noel, both of whom felt neglected. As the day-to-day management of the Lyceum and arranging and accompanying Irving on his American tours in the 1880s left Stoker little time for anything else, Stoker would remain manager of the Lyceum for some 27 years. Making his name as a writer as he had hoped proved even less feasible. Dracula, which was published in 1897, took him some 7 years to complete, and it was in fact his 7th novel. None of the previous nor the subsequent works are particularly noteworthy. Stoker's reputation is based in its entirety on that one work. In the early 1890s, Stoker was a regular visitor to Cruden Bay in Scotland. His month-long holidays to this Aberdeenshire coastal village provided a large portion of available time for writing his books, and it is there that Dracula first began to take form. Most people associate Stoker's vampire with two places: the Yorkshire town of Whitby and the central Romanian region of Transylvania. But though in the book Dracula is from Transylvania, Stoker never visited there, and while 3 chapters of the book are set in Whitby, the author is only known to have gone there once or twice. While it is Cruden Bay he had repeatedly returned to, and the book is infused with the spirit of this area. Essentially, Aberdeenshire stood in for Transylvania. More than 100 years since its publication in 1897, Dracula has lost none of its potency. From the beginning, in which young English solicitor Jonathan Harker journeys through Transylvania to a remote castle to organise a real estate transaction for Count Dracula, there is a snowballing sense of dread. His decision to tell the story in epistolary fashion through diary entries, letters and telegrams and ship's logs adds to the sense of unease. Without a reliable narrator, the reader is unsure where the truth lies. No one had previously imagined that vampires could be cowed by a crucifix or holy water or consecrated communion wafers, which, as Van Helsing says, he has been granted a special, quote, indulgence to use. One of the book's most powerful moments comes when he places a wafer on Mina's forehead. She screams, and it burns her flesh like white-hot metal, a sign that she has herself become a vampire. Other vampire lore invented by Stoker includes Dracula's ability to turn himself into a bat and his signature opera cloak, which folds around him like wings as he scrambles bat-like headfirst down the castle wall. Also, previous vampires had not been aristocrats, whereas Dracula traces his lineage back to the 15th century warlord Vlad the Impaler. Upon publication, Dracula was positively received by some reviewers who pointed to its effective use of horror. In contrast, the reviewers who wrote negatively of it regarded it as excessively frightening. The character of Dracula has remained popular over the years, and many forms of media have adapted the character in various forms, with by some counts around 200 films featuring the character in some description. No other horror character has been emulated more times than Count Dracula. Stoker died in London in April 1912. He was 64 years old. While widely considered a very bad writer who wrote one amazing book, Stoker would in fact write in total 11 fiction novels aside from Dracula, and most of them are not remembered. But what he managed was to create a single masterpiece that stands alongside other classics. But more than that, he created a whole new genre that not only has stood the test of time in literature, but has translated with conspicuous success to cinema as well as other media. While his reputation is based on that single work, and without Dracula, Stoker would have been forgotten. However, this work is so powerful and one of the most influential novels ever written, it has echoed across a century a rare example of modern myth-making, and the novel continues to influence popular culture today, and that means Bram Stoker is a history maker.